Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Zoom meeting on this hot June day. I hope you're all cool. We're delighted to welcome Jonathan Pidduck. He's the Managing Director of Girlings Personal Injury Claims Solicitors, and he'll be speaking to us today about arranging funding for rehabilitation for brain injury after an accident. Thank you so much, Jonathan, and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. I've jotted a few notes down here, so if I keep looking down, it's just because I'm reminding myself what I wanted to say to make sure I don't miss anything important. I specialise in acting with clients who have sustained serious head injuries in accidents. Part of my job involves claiming compensation for people who have been injured in accidents. But to my mind, the most important part is actually arranging rehabilitation, because every client I've ever had has made it very clear that it's not the compensation that is their priority. It is getting better as much as possible, as quickly as possible, and that's where we can come in. Where we are acting for a client, what we do is from the very beginning, as soon as we write to the insurance company for the person responsible for the accident, we tell them that we want to arrange something called an immediate needs assessment, which is basically a rehabilitation assessment where someone like an occupational therapist or a nurse comes along, sees the client, and then prepares a very detailed report listing the various things which can be done to help them. The report would include medical treatment that would help, whether there's any adaptations which will help, like ramps and handrails at the front door, provision of a wheelchair, walk-in bath, that sort of thing. Also, whether there's any support needed before returning to work, as it may be that some clients after a while are able to return to graduated on a graduated return to work, so maybe part-time, 3 or 4 hours a day, and then gradually increase. But they may not be able to do their normal activities when they go back. So again, that's something that the report can consider, whether they're able to return to work, what changes that need to be made. All of the rehab assessments that I arrange, we get the insurance companies to pay for, because appreciate that when you've had an accident, often you're unable to work. You might be on statutory sick pay, you might not be on any pay. So it's not a good time to suddenly start forking out for medical treatment. So like I say, the first thing we do right from the very beginning is ask insurance companies to pay for a rehab assessment to work out what would help the client that we're acting for. Much of what I've mentioned about the rehab assessment is self-explanatory, like what help is needed to go back to work. But I did want to spend a bit of time going through the specific medical areas that are usually covered. I will be going on later on, because I appreciate that many of you won't have had an accident. It might have been some other neurological condition, a stroke or whatever. So my comments about how we actually fund rehab assessments won't apply to everyone, but you may pick up something useful from the summary of the type of specialists that we can get involved. And then at the end, I can have a chat about other ways that you might be able to fund these assessments, even if there's been no claim. So when the rehab assessment is prepared, there will be some consideration as to whether to have a referral to a neurologist or neurosurgeon. As we mentioned before, when we were having a chat before this started, care in hospital tends to be excellent, but once you leave hospital, because of funding constraints on the NHS, they haven't got as much money as we'd all like them to have. Then it tends to be that once you're out of hospital, the amount of support that you get can tail off quite quickly. Neurology is one of the areas where it does still usually take place. It might be a meeting with a neurologist every 6 months or so, but sometimes in the rehab assessment, the person who carries it out will say, well, there's a really long waiting list, they can't be seen for 6 months, they really need some input now to check that they're medication for epilepsy, for example, is right. So if they think it's too long before the next NHS neurological appointment, they can recommend private treatment. Next on my list I've got in front of me is neuropsychology. Some of you may have already seen neuropsychologists, some may not. But basically, neuropsychologists deal with things such as whether the memory's been affected, whether concentration's been affected, whether there's been any change in personality, decision making, that sort of thing. The neuropsychologist will often use tests to see whether, to the extent to which those things have been affected. For a second there, I was going to give an example, and then I realised I'm not really supposed to, because if you do tests, you're not supposed to have any clue in advance about what those tests are likely to be. But they will test to see to what extent memory has been affected, concentration, decision making, etc. And then they will come up with recommendations about how to improve things going forwards. Next thing on my list is occupational therapy, which to my mind, along with neuropsychology, is the next most important thing. They will look at how you live your life on a day-to-day basis, whether you need any help, whether it's in relation to shopping, cooking, housework, just general day-to-day activities, and will give support and guidance about how you can actually tackle those things and whether you need any help to come in with those. Speech and language therapy is another one. A lot of people after neurological injury find it very difficult to speak or to read or to understand when people are talking to them. And intensive speech and language therapy can be recommended because there are ways to improve all of those various things. It's important, obviously, as far as possible, that you are able to communicate with those around you, because there can be a sense of isolation if you can't. And I have clients at the moment who could pretty much only say yes or no following an accident. He's come on great guns, and there's been real progress. Sorry, that's my daughter phoning me. So I forgot to turn my phone off. Apologies. Sorry. So speech and language is something on the list for the initial needs assessment, the rehab assessment, to consider whether someone can come in and make a difference on that. Neurophysiotherapy, another, obviously with a head injury, there are certain things which typically are a problem, but it can be more widespread. So there can be problems with use of an arm, being able to walk, you might need a wheelchair, etc. So again, with neurophysiotherapy, they can come up with ways to improve function, either in terms of exercise or using certain tools such as, need to get the FES right, functional electrical stimulation, where they put small currents into the muscles to activate them, and that can make a big difference. I've had clients, again, who've gone from wheelchairs to being able to stand on their own 2 feet, which has been great to see the progress that's been made. Psychological input is another. There can be a difference with mental health. Not always. I've had one client who actually felt better after an accident than before. But there can be an effect on mental health if people feel that they haven't got the independence they used to have. Also, there can be psychotherapy useful for family who are providing support, because it can be quite a major change for everyone, not just the injured person, but the whole family. So again, the report that we would obtain would look to see what can be done for the injured person in terms of treatment, but also for the entire family group if needed. There are various other types of treatment recommendations which might be included. Neurovestibular, because balance is often a factor. Orthopedic, in the accident, there may have been a back injury, a neck injury, an arm or a leg. Actually fractured, neurophysiotherapy could deal with if it's to do with the actual brain injury itself, but there may be a separate injury for limbs or the spine. Endocrinology, things like diabetes, anemia, vitamin D deficiency can all be linked with a head injury, and they can have their own effect on fatigue, attention span, memory. So that's something which is often needs to be investigated to see whether it's purely in relation to the head injury or whether there may be some other factors which are easy to resolve. Ophthalmology, some head injuries can affect eyesight. I've had clients who have got no peripheral vision, which can be dangerous if it's not picked up, because it means things like crossing roads can be more dangerous if you don't realise that there's a car heading towards you. And even dental injuries, some head injuries, then obviously teeth can be impacted if you've had a blow to the front of the face. So again, all of these things are things which can be included in the rehab assessment in order to see basically what can make you as well as you possibly can be, as quickly as you possibly can be. All of these things, actually, sorry, before I go on to that, case managers, if we've got all of these various things happening and the person who prepares the report says, okay, we need a neuropsychologist, we need an occupational therapist, we need psychotherapy, we need trying to go back to my list now, ophthalmology, then it's very difficult, especially if you're not mobile, for you to go out and sort all these things out, especially when they've all got to be paid for. So the case manager, after preparing the report, will often stay on board, partly so that they can coordinate all of this, make sure that all of the specialists are instructed, sort out their payment so you don't need to worry about it. Make sure they're talking to each other, because it's no point if one person is giving you advice, another person is giving you slightly different advice. It's much better if they can all sit around the table, discuss the person, share ideas, and come up with a coordinated plan. That's called a multidisciplinary team meeting. So basic, and they can arrange appointments and basically do all of the running around in the background. They can also sort out support workers and rehabilitation assistants, who are people who come in on a daily basis to actually provide the care and support which is needed. So leaving aside the actual medical side of things, it's having someone to come in on a day-to-day basis to either provide all of the care, or if there's a family member doing a lot of that, to come in for a day or two, so the family member can go off, get shopping done, go to the cinema, whatever, and the support worker or rehab assistant can provide respite in that respect. All of this is really useful, like I say, for accident claims when we're dealing with things, and we also deal with medical claims too. For all of that, like I say, it's really important that from the very outset, because the sooner we can line this up, the more effective it tends to be, is to get the insurance company to agree to pay for the initial assessment, and then all of the treatment, all of the aids, all of the assistance going back to work, basically ask them to pay for everything that needs paying. If liability is admitted in the accident, then the insurance company will almost always agree to do that. Sometimes they will agree even if they don't admit liability, because they know that if they go to court and lose, they're going to have to pay for what's happened. And it's therefore in their best interest, as well as my clients, to make sure that the injured person makes as full a recovery as they can possibly make. So even when liability is denied, if they think that there is a risk that they are going to need to admit liability later on, then they will often agree to pay for rehabilitation, which is great, because, like I say, to my mind, the most important part of my job, it is important to recover compensation, especially if you've lost your job, so that you've got money coming in. But to my mind, and I think every client I've ever had, the most important thing is to get better, and that's where these rehab reports and funding treatment afterwards is just so important all round. And it has been really good to see what a difference it has made to client. For example, the client who could only say yes or no is like come on leaps and bounds. We've had clients who it looked as if the only way forward for them would be in an inpatient rehabilitation facility, but we've managed, with a lot of scaffolding and support to make sure that they could stay in the community. So with the right scaffolding, I think that is the best word, scaffolding around, it has made a big difference to our clients. And from my personal point of view, that is the most rewarding part of the job. It's great getting compensation, and I really enjoy trying to get as much possible from defendants. But the really rewarding thing is seeing someone coming from where they are at the beginning to where they can be with the right treatment and with the right support from a case manager. It's so important. I get that a lot of people watching this won't have had an accident. If you have had an accident, then even if you're not worried about compensation, I'd suggest that you do seek legal advice, because if nothing else, it may mean that you can pay for all of the treatment, which can be really expensive. It doesn't have to be from us. You can go into your local solicitors. That's absolutely fine. But if you do go to local solicitors, I would urge you to make sure that they specialise in brain injury, because some firms deal with general accidents, and it's too specialist to try and pick up as you go along. I've been dealing with these for like 20 years, and like 90% of the cases I do are brain injury. There are plenty of other solicitors in the country who are in the same boat. So feel free to go to your local solicitors if you have had an accident. But like I say, please, please, please make sure that they are experienced in dealing with brain injury, and that they're not just general personal injury who are willing to have a punt at it and see what happens. If you haven't had an accident, and some of the areas of treatment sound as if they would assist you, then there are still ways to go forwards. For the initial needs assessment, which is the rehab assessment, all of the ones that we do, we get paid for by the insurance companies. So this isn't an avenue that I've had to go down personally. But my understanding is that the local authority, the county council, can pay for a needs assessment. If you are struggling to cope on a day-to-day basis, they can get the needs assessment done and then get the support you need. The only drawback is that sometimes that support is what the local authority can afford rather than what is ideal. So if you can get a private assessment done, great, but like I say, it is quite expensive to deal with. So if there's not the claim to fund that, then local authority would be the way to go. There are other potential ways of funding all of this. If you had a stroke or other neurological event, and there's no accident involved, no one to claim against, then if you had medical insurance at the time, then you could look at the medical insurance, medical insurer paying for the treatment you need, and then we can go back to the various types of treatment that we've discussed, the occupational therapy, neuropsychology, neurology, and ask them to pay for it. The other alternative is the NHS, but I keep coming back to the fact that the medical specialists and the NHS are first rate, and many of the specialists that we would use, in fact, virtually all the specialists we would use, actually work for the NHS. So the quality of care there is fantastic, but because of cost constraints, then it means that if you try to get a rehab package put together purely on the NHS, it can be a very frustrating experience, simply because there isn't really the money there. And if you do get on the waiting list to see someone, you might wait 6 months and then be told, well, okay, you've got 6 visits, and then that's it. I had particular problems with a client of ours who was injured when he was 13, and there is very, very little neurological outpatient input in Kent, which is where we're based, which is why we had to put together this like huge package for him, because the care that he was getting in the community from the NHS was pretty much non-existent, not because they weren't interested, but just because there weren't the pathways to actually sort that out. So bottom line, after me chuntering away for the last 20 minutes or so, is if there has been an accident, even if you're not interested in the actual compensation side of things, I would recommend that you see a specialist brain injury solicitor, whether it's me, whether it's someone local to you, as long as they're specialist, because if nothing else, then there is a fair chance that they will be able to put together a package from specialists who can make you as well as you can possibly be. If that isn't an option because there's not been an accident or it's not been anyone else's fault, then medical insurance would be the best bet. But if not, NHS. But my only recommendation on that is if you need to go the NHS route, and many of you will already have packages in place. But if you feel that there is extra medical support that you need after what we've been talking about today, then a pushy GP is the best way forwards. Some clients, GPs, if you come in, then they will talk to you, and then they push less hard, whereas other GPs can be fantastic, work out what you need, and go out there and do everything they can to make sure you get it. So I'm probably going to annoy GPs all over the country by saying this, but if you can get a pushy GP on the side to push if there is treatment, which we've been talking about today, which you think that is exactly what I need, but I haven't got it, then talk to your GP and see if he can get that NHS referral, because it really does make a difference. I think if there's any questions afterwards, more than happy to deal with them. Alternatively, you can contact me or your local solicitor afterwards, and Silver Linings can give you my details or details of other solicitors. But thank you for listening, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That was fantastic. I certainly learned a lot myself as well. So I think what we'll do, we'll open up the floor if anyone would like to share their experiences or ask any questions. I'll just open up the floor. I'll remove the spotlight, Jonathan, so we can all see each other. So thank you. Would anyone like to ask Jonathan any questions or share their own experiences?
Like Jonathan, the last statement probably resonates with me, right, regarding the GP surgery. Obviously, from my experience, I'm still battling on after a year and 3 months, right, to see someone. The obstacle I face is the reception manager, right, saying that you'll have to fill in a triage form. I can't get, even I tried with another organization called Headways, try to get them in to intervene, try to get them to sort out with my appointments. I've had no neurologist appointment for what, a year and 3 months, right? And I probably resonate with the third statement, apart from the two you mentioned, but I can't get no appointments to get them either to push or to just have a general conversation regarding what you said. So that's my own experience of it. So
yeah,
I mean, your last statement.
Like I say, it's so important to it shouldn't really depend on the GP, but it's a bit of a postcode lottery. Some GPs can be brilliant in really pushing things through. Other GPs are less cooperative, for want of a better word.
I was tempted to say risky though, but like my GP, Dr. Schramm, he's really good at, like, if I need a referral, he'll write me a referral to Adam Brooks, and he would do it straight away. He knows me by now. He knows the way the NHS operates.
I think that's exactly it. You need proactive was the word I was looking for earlier, and I came up with. But you need someone who is proactive, who can work out what needs to be done and go out and get for you. Reactive isn't as good if the GP will only do anything if you come in and beat your store down and say, "Look, I really need help here." But if you've got a good GP, that's fantastic. We probably shouldn't list the bad GPs today, by the way, because if this is going on YouTube, we don't want any legal repercussions. But like some are a lot more proactive than others, and you really do need a GP in your corner. And like I say, I really want to stress that this isn't knocking the NHS, because they do the best job that they can with the resources available. But the problem is that there isn't enough money to go around. So it tends to be the people who shout loudest actually get the attention they need. And the people who sit back and think, well, what's the point, that sometimes they don't get the help they need, which is why it's great when I can short circuit that and say, well, okay, we can get this package put together, you know, within a couple of months to give you all the help that you need. And I wish that I could say to each and every one of you that I could do that all round, because the care that you get, I attend these meetings where we've got like 7 people sitting around a table where the doctors are saying, yeah, well, I've done this, well, you know, oh, yeah, I've done that, oh, well, that's handy, it's useful to know. And having that MDT approach, multidisciplinary, is really, really useful. If you've got a GP who is in your corner, then that I can't stress enough that is so important. So yeah, I'm glad you found one.
Did you say MDP?
Sorry, MDT. It's multidisciplinary team meeting. So it's where all of the doctors come together and share what's happened to them. Usually it's very handy. Well, actually, it's always very handy, because sometimes it's handy because they say, I found that there's problems with speech and language, and another one goes, oh, he's been really, really fatigued in our sessions, so it's probably tiredness, and if we get through that, we've got problems. Sometimes it's useful though, because one of them says something and the other one goes, oh, he's just told me completely the opposite, so it's good to know. But it having joined up therapy is helpful, because you've got a whole team pulling in the same direction, rather than a neurologist every 12 months or 6 to 12 months, and then someone else who you might get to see on a one-off, who may or may not know what the neurologist is just about to write from the appointment last week. So having that joined up way of thinking is really useful, but it's difficult.
I'm thinking about my rehab. My best rehab was in the Alzheimer's Centre, and you get my chief support worker was probably, they had that case, and so you'd have a speech language therapy and lots of different therapies, but there'd be one person like the
coordinating it all. Yeah, that's the key. It's coordination to make sure that people don't just disappear off in their own separate directions. So I've got to press an OK button. Having someone actually making it a concerted campaign, rather than everyone going off and doing their own thing, does make a difference. And that's the function that a case manager, the person who prepares the rehabilitation assessment, the immediate needs assessment, that's when they come in, because they can make sure that everyone is pulling in the same direction, and bring on extra people on the team. Because there's no point in one person saying, actually, I think we really, really need an audiologist on the side, and someone makes a note of that, and then nothing's done. So having the case manager there means that, okay, we'll bring that person in. We'll need an endocrinologist to come in to look at diabetes, because again, if it's noted and someone writes it down and does nothing, then there's no real point in having that consultation. But having someone who can oversee the whole thing, and get everyone coaching horses, it's great. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I've got a question, please. So how important is it to seek help for rehabilitation shortly after an accident, and is there a time limit by which you can do that?
The sooner the better is the short answer, which is why when we're instructed, the very first letter we send to the insurance company includes a paragraph saying we want to get this rehabilitation assessment in the diary immediately. It used to be said that there could be improvement within the first 2 years or so of an incident. I think we've moved past that in recent years, and it's recognised that improvement can actually be made significantly longer than that. But basically, the sooner the better. The first 6 months are particularly key, but it can be longer than 2 years. It could be many years potentially afterwards with the right treatment, because you could be taught ways to adapt to any issues that you have. But it's obviously best to have treatment start 3 months after an incident than 3 years, and certainly better than to do that 30 years later. But never stop trying is the message.
Thank you. Luke, you have your hand up.
I was going to bring up, how about if it's a physical, something's physically disappearing, but so that slows down in rehab, and then like I'm talking from experience with when I had before my craniotomy.
Yeah.
Because that took many years. My recovery improved so quickly after my plate was in, and then it got infected, got taken away, and then it slowed down again, and then it increased when I got this one in, it's staying in. But like if I didn't have the basically the help or the insight to have that done, I could be still in a wheelchair. And
yeah, it makes me. I've got a client at the moment who's just had a craniotomy, and it was he really hated things beforehand because he had to wear like a crash helmet to protect his skull, and quite apart from the actual needing it done, he wanted it done just to make him feel better about himself. He also had an infection as well, so they had to come back. In that case, because we've got funding from the insurance company, then as soon as the surgeon was ready to try again, then we could get him booked straight in. So everything was fairly quick, but like I come back to the fact that not everyone's got the luxury of having an insurance company who's going to chuck money at it, and it just comes back again to GPs pushing and pushing and pushing to make sure it can be done as soon as it can be. But NHS waiting lists being what they are, it's going to take longer. But for everything medical, the sooner the better.
Yeah. One of our members, Alan, has got his fingers crossed.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Paula, you have your hand up.
So as I was trying to, well, I don't know what the word was, trying to reply in between, I think so someone put me on mute, so I've been writing in the chat. My GP hasn't been cooperative in the least. I had encephalitis when I was 1, so I didn't have an accident, but I had a brain infection that gave me status epilepticus. I've never had any rehab, and I was cut off from the neurologist when I was 26 because my medication had stopped me from having convulsions. They thought I no longer needed a neurologist, but the reality is I need a neurologist for the rest of my life now that I am 50. So there's all sorts of different medication interactions, and epilepsy medication should be always the same brand, apparently. So,
I need to be slightly careful because it absolutely mustn't give any medical advice of any description whatsoever because it's outside my.
Okay.
You're on epilepsy medication, are you?
I am.
It's not being reviewed by anyone.
No.
That doesn't sound right to me.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, this is what I've been trying to do that with everybody I can find. I found Epilepsy Action. That they've got a page that says, do not sub my drugs, meaning, prescribe a different brand name of that drug, switching different brands. So, and the impact it can have on the medication to it stopping from working and causing a breakthrough seizure. Right.
All I can really say is from.
Oh no! I'm just going to say a few things.
Sorry, from our experience, what we tend to do is even when clients are.
Am I not allowed to talk? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'm going to be quiet. Can I finish off my sentence? I really do need to finish.
No, of
before
course.
I'm interrupted.
Okay.
I'm not allowed to be interrupted, really, you know, because of my processing speed and my attention span. So I must say, where coordination was concerned, and you were talking about physiotherapy. In this case, it was my physiology was kind of epilepsy and that sort of thing. Then, you know, and it's just, I couldn't seem to find something that I could, you know, relate to kind of thing, except that I haven't had any rehab. But, you know, I guess my dad might be able to get some family therapy since he's my carer. But, you know, he never knew about that. A rehab assistant as an outpatient. Well, I'm trying to get back on the books as an outpatient anyhow. It's a right nightmare when you if you haven't had a seizure and but you need them for other medication interactions that can save your life, so to speak. So anyhow, it's a kind of merry-go-round to start getting the first new neurologist to start all over again. So.
Okay.
Well, Paula, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know you've had an extremely difficult time. So I guess it illustrates, Jonathan, a little bit, you know, the real
I
consequence.
don't know whether it does or what, but, you know, where Jonathan has anything to do with what Jonathan has said, but I've tried to,
yeah.
You know.
Well, I think what I wanted to point out was, Jonathan, the fragility of the audience that is being underserved. So I think the magnitude of the underserved from my experience is tremendous, because in most instances they don't even get past go, because the system makes it that much difficult to try and defend your position or your entitlement or your rights for different treatment.
Yeah, that's been my experience with clients that have come to us trying to get treatment on the NHS. Like I say, as long as you're in hospital, then you tend to get absolutely first-class treatment. But once you're out the door, I wouldn't say completely you're left on your own, but in some cases it's not far off.
To me.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
Jonathan, can I? I'm so sorry. I'd just move on with a question that I would really like to ask you.
Yeah.
In the last 6 months, my sister-in-law has had 3 strokes. Obviously, she was sent home with no support. She overdosed on her insulin because she had cognitive issues from the first stroke and visual issues. But it was a cascade of errors. And now she's had 3 strokes. And for me, it's just so alarming that she has 0 rehab focus in her care. What they've done is they simply have somebody coming, a nurse in the morning to check her insulin and a nurse in the evening to give her medication. But there doesn't appear to be any transparency in a plan for how they're going to move past that care.
It doesn't surprise me, to be honest. It's time and time again clients come to us. It's great from our point of view that it's not quite pressing a button because there are hoops that we have to jump through, but we can get people the care that they need, knowing how bad things are. And like, I can't stress enough, this isn't an attack on the NHS, because they're doing what they can with the funds they've got available. but the funds they've got available are nowhere near enough to deal with these type of problems. It's just, yeah, it doesn't even touch the sides. So there are, like say, pushy GPs and asking local authorities for immediate needs assessments isn't an adequate answer, but there's very little that can be done when there's no support network as there is in an injury claim. There's just not enough money, and people all over the country are having an absolute nightmare getting the treatment they need.
It's almost like having a dog sanctuary and then saying, but we've got no water for the dog.
Yeah.
Sorry, just don't have the water. You wouldn't. I guess in my position, Jonathan, with the charity and the development of the charity, I've tried so hard for years to champion the needs of the population, not just in the first 6 months, not just in the first 2 years, but forever. And because people with brain injuries are changing all the time. It's almost like you can see at different times in their rehab where they actually have like a rehab spurt that you couldn't have gotten earlier. It's very interesting to see these spurts of improvement over the lifetime, which then changes the needs.
And it is important to keep up the momentum. If there's a period of things going well, then what you don't want is 6 months before you go and see someone else, and by then you've missed the window of opportunity. So I don't think that there's an answer to that other than someone waving a magic wand and the NHS doubling their funding. But it doesn't seem to be a priority. They haven't. It is really expensive dealing with neurological issues, and for one reason or another.
And water is really expensive for the dog.
Yeah, and
but do you know what I mean? It's where,
yeah, completely.
And honestly, what I guess one thing maybe to also know about the charity is that we're trying very hard and we're getting involved in some of the governmental initiatives that are looking for the long-term needs of the brain injured, because I don't know where that line is where it becomes. And maybe you're the exact person to ask this, where they become negligible. It's not just, oh, sorry, we can't afford this. It's actually causing further damage.
Yeah, we do have a medical negligence department here, as many solicitors across the country do, which deal with where medical treatment or failure to give medical treatment has made things worse, and that a claim can be made for that. It's not really my area, so again, I don't want to go into too much detail, but certainly if you have a condition because of the treatment that you've been given or not given, or you have a condition which has been made worse for those reasons, then it is worth getting advice to see whether or not there's a claim, and details can be sent through to us to look at, or like I say, to other local solicitors if people would prefer to do that, because I don't want to make this sound like a sales opportunity. It's information rather than.
But it's also how people defend themselves.
Yeah, but medical negligence is something that can be claimed for. It's quite a high bar because you need to show that no reasonably competent medical professional would have done things in that way. But if it is negligent, then compensation would be payable. But again, not my particular field, but I've got colleagues here whose it is. But there is a concern that if anything, things might be getting worse, because we've got links with Headway locally, and the concern there is that, conscious of not going into politics, but if certain party gets in, then any little assistance that they get at the moment is likely to disappear completely in cost-cutting issues. So there is a worry that things are pretty bad for people who desperately need help with their neurological conditions, that it might get worse before it gets better. But I don't really want to end on like a negative side of things. There are things that could be done, but even though they're not anywhere near as much as they should be.
Sorry, and I leave it open for other people. But for example, with Gopal, when he was telling you after his second shunt surgery, he was simply shown the door. See ya, you're finished here. And he he told us all at the charity that when he was going home, he was walking like this. Is that what you said, Gopal?
Yeah.
You were walking like this, which means, his balance and knowing where he was. He took public transport home.
I mean, I think it's outrageous and dangerous.
Yeah, but hold on one second, Adrian. I'm getting to my big question for Jonathan.
Yeah.
Thank God Gopal got home safe that day. But I think if we were taking odds on the probability of that at the start of his journey, we would have thought there was a pretty high level of risk to send this gentleman home in the condition he was independently.
I agree, but he's very determined, Gopal.
He is Gopal. He's Supal.
That's the main contraindication. His own determination.
But let's just say,
but I think it's irresponsible of them to have
what
done
if Supal fell and broke his leg or his hip?
Yeah.
Would that be negligence on the part of the discharge team?
I can't give you a definitive answer because it's not my area. I deal with accidents rather than medical claims. But
Sure.
I think if I had a telephone call from someone who asked me that question, then I would certainly send it over to our medical negligence department because I think it's certainly worth looking at. Yes. Then there needs to have been an injury as a result. So thank God, because he did manage to get home in one piece, it's fine. But if he had been injured because he was discharged when it was unsafe to discharge him, then that would be something that would have been worth seeking legal advice to see whether or not there was a claim. And our medical negligence department or another firm's department can certainly look at that and let me know.
Sure. We're so grateful for your time, Jonathan. We really are.
That's okay. I hope it's been of some assistance to people.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. That was very informative, very interesting. Thank you.
I mean, I put one thing in the chat because I kept on raising Article 26 in England. They wanted to try and ignore it. And that includes conferences and brain injury and other things like that. But it's kind of like standard here in Portugal to have a look at that aspect of the UN Disability Convention. So why hasn't that been happening in the UK? Is that beginning to change? Because it's a very strong right.
I think there would need to be legislation or court proceedings before anything is done. If it's left to the NHS, I really don't want to knock them, but they have a set pot of money which they have chosen how to use. It's not sufficient. It's just not sufficient.
But all the more reason to do this. I mean, the very first case under the UN Disability Convention, and Sweden, of all places, got comprehensively done mainly over that article. It's known as the Swedish Whirlpool case back in 2011, and that set a strong precedent. And in that case, it was about refuse planning permission to put in a therapeutic whirlpool. Someone needed. But they also said that many other articles we could have done them under, but that was the main one, and that's from the UN Disability Committee.
Yeah, I think it would certainly take legal action to be brought by someone.
Well, yeah, but you see, what I found is I kept on raising this at conference, and it kept on getting it was never properly answered.
Yeah.
Because it should be a standard part of saying under these articles, which reinforces the arguments that you're making, because what you're stating in effect is, if we're not satisfied with the outcome, we're prepared to take it all the way to the UN and get more, and the mere threat of doing that is the kind of thing that like look at the human rights toolkit and so on, that say use all these arguments, and then that will generally make them negotiate and then cave rather than face further legal action.
It's slightly different from our side of things, because in the scope of an injury claim, this isn't really a problem for us, because we can get insurance companies to pay everything. So that's not really an avenue that we have to go. So I can see that might be something worth exploring, but because from our side of things, if we've got an injury claim, we get the insurance company to pay for any steps that are necessary. So it's sort of outside my
if someone hasn't got the money to pay for an insurance company, then then they have to rely on the NHS.
And I mean, that's where it would be kind of useful. I think it should be really brought up.
But there are separate human rights lawyers that sort of could look at that, but it's sort of outside my comfort zone.
But I mean, I kept on raising this at conferences and so on, and I never really got satisfactory answers to why it wasn't being done. It seems very, very obvious and straightforward. And it's standard to use it in Portugal, for instance.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, Adrian. All right. Well, Lewin, do you want to do the closing ceremony?
Yes, of course. So thanks once again, Jonathan. Thank you for your time today, your insight, your experience. It's been wonderful to have you with us.
It was the first time I've attended one of these daytime groups. So
because you find it daytime difficult, from what I remember you saying.
Yeah, but so sort of like evenings at best. So, and I obviously I missed the first hour because of it, and because I was on the phone to another charity, Epilepsy Action. So,
Sorry, what action?
Epilepsy.
OCD Action.
As in no. As in seizures, seizures. Epilepsy.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you made it.
I've got loads of different things going on at the moment because of the lack of having a neurologist, and the GP surgery literally being not non-cooperative in the least. I've not known a
But
thing.
If you've got epilepsy, you need regular neurological reviews, surely.
I should, but I don't get them.
Well, that's the kind of thing that Article 26 should be useful, frankly.
Yeah, Article 26.
Article 25 is health under the UN Disability Convention. Those two.
The last time I saw a neurologist was 24 years ago.
That's
Article
absurd.
26. Oh, where did you find that, Adrian?
Well, it is absurd, but it doesn't surprise me that much, as I was a Neurological Alliance trustee for 3 years. And there was a kind of house joke that we had that, the situation vis-a-vis Italy has improved. It used to be that they had 22 times as many neurologists per head of population. Now it's only 14. Wholly inadequate. They just don't take neurology sufficiently seriously in the UK, and they do not produce anything like enough neurologists. And I mean, the neurologists I had, interestingly enough, had been imported from Australia to deal with the CJD epidemic. He was a specialist in that, but it happened to be the one I got. And he said at a meeting that I had with him and so on, because the case wasn't really progressing much.
Where did you find that Article 26? What website did you find that?
That's the UN Disability Convention.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I didn't know. I beg your pardon. I wrote down the United Nations.
So it's Article 25.
Put down United Nations. Okay.
Disability Convention. There's Article 25, which is health.
Right.
And that's definitely engaged. And Article 26 is habilitation and rehabilitation. Now, habilitation is kind of getting things to work for the first time.
Oh, I see.
Which may be something that is needed, and rehabilitation is kind of like repairing things
I've never had
that used to work and and don't. So it would be a mixture of those two. And it's meant to be local and comprehensive and include vocational. The article specifically states that.
Well, see, Adrian is our international disability advisor. He's
I see. News to me.
really, really up on this stuff, and
So I've got a couple of things in common, I think, haven't we, Adrian? Since how long we've had our brain injury, so to speak.
Well, I mean, it was kind of, in my case, down from it because things like OCD and hoarding can be strongly linked to brain injury. And I had an OCD diagnosis, but then subsequently hoarding disorder diagnosis, which I was they were doing some research to create the diagnosis. So mine was actually before 2011, and it became official in the manuals in 2013. But I took part in the research, which they were kind of diagnosing people to
well,
get it
Adrian,
recognized.
thank you for sharing
More
that.
yeah.
And thanks everybody for sharing today. And it was so nice to see the people I haven't had to get to see for a while. So I say a special goodbye to who you are. It was really good to see you, and a great big gratitude to Jonathan for giving his time to us today. It's so important.
It's been a pleasure.
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay.